Jake again with Bond Performance. Just wanted to make a quick video on some new product development. I've been getting a ton of questions lately about the V2 intercooler. The short and sweet version here is if you're not going to push a big hybrid turbo or a very large full frame turbo with multi-port injection, a PM4 controller, and upgraded low pressure fuel pump or fuel pumps, it doesn't apply to you at all. The V2 front mount isn't just something I felt like doing just because. It's something that the high horsepower cars are demanding, because currently there isn't an intercooler front mount or direct replacement that'll properly handle 600 horsepower. So we've got that in development. So you can cut the video short if that's all you're curious about, is what the differences were. I can get into more details in just a second. Okay, so now that we've straightened that out, the original front mount intercooler features a vibrant core, which vibrant, just kind of generically, they gotta put a number on it. They rated it 550 horsepower, but through testing all over the United States, literally every state except for Alaska, we've got customers in Hawaii, everything from stock IS-20 cars to big turbo cars, we've found that generally low 400s, low to mid 400 wheel horsepower is what you're not going to want to exceed with the original front mount intercooler with the vibrant core. With that being said, that is more than enough headroom for 99% of builds, and those of you who are maybe concerned with drilling the crash bar, I have installation tips and suggestions video outside of the regular install video that shows in real time me drilling the crash bar. It takes under 5 minutes. I mean, it literally couldn't be any easier. There's been guys between 16 and 65 years old that have done this installation on their own. I promise you, it's not a big deal, unless you make it a big deal. If you drilled in properly, yeah, you can be in for a long day. But slow drill speed, and starting with a pilot hole or a smaller drill bit and then stepping up to the final size, again with very low drill bit RPM and lots of pressure, it's not a big deal. So moving on. The V2 intercooler, not only is it only going to see an improvement on big turbo cars that are pushing a huge volume of air, thanks to, as I mentioned, thousands and thousands of dollars in fueling mods, it's also much more of an intensive installation and tremendously expensive compared to the original. So just the intercooler core itself cost more than 2.5 times more than the vibrant core. There's additional brackets that have to be made on my end. There's welding that has to be done on that extremely expensive intercooler core. So I haven't finalized pricing, but for a ballpark number, figure about double the price of the original intercooler. So if you're one of those guys, well, I just gotta have the latest and greatest, that should probably help you make the decision that the V1, the original, is perfect for your build. Even if you're going to use a hybrid turbo, if you're not going to throw thousands of fueling mods to really push to limits. So figure $1,400 range plus shipping would be a safe bet for the V2. And also on the user end, on the installation side of things, the V1, the original intercooler, takes up literally every cubic inch of available space with the stock crash bar. The only way it could be any bigger dimensionally would be a 1/4 inch thicker, which the V2 is. With that being said, the V2 requires cutting of the crash bar. So again, this applies to 1% of MQB owners that would even require this massive intercooler. So just to put things in perspective, the original front mount is 661 cubic inches of core volume. with that 661 volume, it's able to match or beat any of the direct replacements. Now, I know Jeff of mygolfmk7.com doesn't show it performing at the top of its class, but you have to take his tests with a grain of salt. He has purposefully discluded several, and I mean almost all of the logs that have been sent to him for them being too good, unbelievably good. In some instances, logging, when the ambient temperature is very close to being met with the intercooler, the reading can actually dip below ambient by a degree or two. And according to engineer Jeff, that is completely impossible. Now, I'm not an engineer, I didn't design the Mark 7 sensors, but I would have to personally chalk that up to either the two sensors that are comparing ambient to intake air temp are not exactly calibrated identically, or the instant vacuum drawn when the blow-off valve or diverter valve releases 25 to 30 pounds of boost. Anyone who's used an air compressor or let air out of a tire very quickly knows that an instant release of pressure also will have an associated temperature drop. So I'm not a scientist, I'm not an engineer, I'm not trying to make excuses, I'm just explaining my educated guess as to how in logs during shifts, and only during shifts, not in boost, only when there's an immediate release of boost pressure between gears, that there's a potential for the data logs to show -1 to 2 versus ambient outside temperature. So again, I love what Jeff does. He puts a ton of his time and effort into it, but we just kind of don't see eye to eye on that. Him discluding logs, which was basically implying that my customers lie, which there's no incentive to do. So the original meeting or exceeding the performance of any direct replacement at 661 cubic inches. The V2 is 865.2 cubic inches. So that puts it above and beyond some of the other direct replacements out there. And this is a front mount intercooler. So there's a great size advantage over the V1. And where the V1 was running into problems was the overall volume of air, and that size of a core was becoming a restriction. The core was too small to flow enough air. With the new core being both in much cooler air, no radiant heat from the radiator and AC condenser like a direct replacement, and matching or exceeding the size of many of them, it has been performing tremendously. The car that's running the prototype is in New Jersey. It's a Golf R with roughly 600 horsepower. We've been kind of playing phone tag. We're both really busy, but he did actually strap the car on the dyno. I haven't got those results yet. He has been running at the track. The only track times and feedback I've got were on a very conservative 93 octane tune. The car trapped 129 miles per hour in 83 degree heat, and he said it never exceeded 10 degrees over ambient going down the track. He said in the staging lanes it was sitting about 120 degrees, which with zero airflow you'll have that. But he said generally about 4 or 5 degrees over ambient at the end of the quarter mile. So that in itself is pretty impressive in my eyes for a car making that kind of horsepower. So the development phase is not done. I've sent him revised brackets. I'm not happy with where the intercooler sits as of now. I haven't even got to speak with him as to has he tried the new brackets and any feedback on that. So for the guys that are asking, you know, what's the due date? When's this V2 going to be done? There is no set time. Whenever it happens, it'll happen. Like I said, he's busy, I'm busy. He's just an enthusiast. I'm just doing this on the side. I haven't actually seen his car in person. So we're doing development remotely, which is something I normally do not do. But basically it was on his request, so I'm taking advantage of all the help that he's given me, and we're gonna make a knockout product in the end. But I will not release it until I'm 100% happy with it, fitment, performance, and overall. So just like everything else, it'll get done when it gets done. So if you're curious about the cutting that needs to be done on the intercooler, end tank to end tank, the Precision Turbo Engineering, or PTE, intercooler core featured in the V2 kit needs about 32 inches of clearance and an extra roughly 2 inches clearance height-wise cut out of the OEM bumper rebar. So this is going to be for off-road race use only, obviously, like any aftermarket part. No, I'm not going to crash test Mark 7s with this. Don't be ridiculous. I did originally plan to offer a tubular bumper rebar. That may still happen in the future, but after looking into things a little bit closer, it'll be a much bigger project than I anticipated. The whole front of the car is actually indexed and mounted by the bumper rebar. So the mounting tabs that hold the core support, and basically everything from the bumper mounts forward is held by that. So lots of critical measurements, the hood latch, everything relies on where that's mounted. So not something I'm just going to throw together. I'm not going to leave my daily driver tore apart for a month while it's developed. It'll just have to be one of those things. When the opportunity presents itself, we'll take advantage of it, but until then, the solution will be to cut the factory bar, which, according to the prototype feedback, it's not a big deal. I mean, obviously you're not going to try and whittle it with a pocket knife. You're going to use proper tools, and if you don't have them, you'd want to pay a professional to cut it. With a 4.5 inch grinder and a cutoff disc, it should take no more than 10 or 15 minutes to get it exactly perfect how you want it. Not difficult at all. There's plenty of structure left behind, and not to mention the front mount will be in that place. So we unintentionally crash tested one of the V1 intercoolers. I've posted pictures of that. I can post them again at the end of this video, how the V1 intercooler held up in a head-on collision, which actually totaled the car, if anybody's interested to see that. And also on that note, the charge pipes from that kit survived the crash. They still fit the weld fixture, and they were resold, and they're currently being run on a car in California. So as far as the strength of the tubing on the charge pipes, crash test approved. So don't want anybody crashing their car, but should it happen, there's a good chance that my parts will survive the crash even if the car doesn't. So kind of a long video, kind of rambling, but hopefully I've answered all the questions that anyone may have had. I can always do a follow-up video. Comment, subscribe if you haven't. I'd really like to get up over 1,000 subscribers, and everyone counts. So I appreciate you watching if you made it this far. Appreciate all the support, and thanks for watching.